Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Inking Out Loud podcast. Today we're wrapping up our discussion of The Gathering Storm, Book 12 of The Wheel of Time, in the first of the Brandon Sanderson trilogy that ends the series as a whole. So, I'm your host, Rob Santos. I'm joined, as I always am, by my co-host, Drew McCaffrey.
How's it going, everybody?
And I just want to get straight down to it. Drew, take it away, my man. Give us a recap.
All right. So, where we picked up in this book was pretty much exactly halfway through. We started at chapter 26 and read through the end. And we basically kicked things off with a lot of Matt, where he and his crew go into Hinderstap and discover the crazy bubble of evil there, where anybody killed during the night respawns every morning in the town. From there, we went to Rand as he went into Bandar Ebon and found out, how bad things have gotten there. He also sets up a meeting, or follows through on the meeting that he set up with Tuon, where he tries to basically will her, using his Taveran influence, to buckle under to him, but she resists. She decides he's way too dangerous, and she goes back and removes the veil, becomes Fortuona, and she sends off the attack on Tar-Valon. And pretty directly after that, we get back to Egwene in the White Tower, where the tower gets attacked by the Shanshan. In the midst of this, Egwene has a conversation with Varen Mathwin, and we find out that Varen has been a member of the Black Ajah all along, but working from the inside to take them down and record them. Egwene helps rally the forces in the White Tower to drive off the Shanshan. They successfully do, although Egwene passes out, and Swan, in against Egwene's orders, goes into the tower, into Tar-Valon, and saves Egwene, her unconscious self in the aftermath of the attack, brings her back out to the rebel camp, where Egwene enacts a plan to uncover the Black Ajah and purge them, including Shiriam. Some of them get away, but many of them do not. And then Egwene leads her faction into Tar-Valon to reunite the tower. Egwene is chosen as Amyrlin by the Tower Aes Sedai as well. And then we're back to Rand, where he kind of reaches his final breaking point, where Cadsuane tries to use Tam to manipulate him, and Rand nearly kills Tam. He freaks out, he runs away, goes to Ebu Dar, where he wanders among the Shanshan and the Tuatha An, before traveling to Dragonmount, where he plans on basically destroying the world with the Choedan Call, but he has an apotheosis atop Dragonmount, where he kind of realizes what it means to, be given a second chance and to try again, and ends up destroying the Choedan Call instead of the world, and sort of comes to a realization about what Lews Therin has been all along, that being not a separate person, but just, Rand himself, and just a figment of his madness. And that's pretty much where we end. So,
Yeah.
We had some fireworks in this part.
Yeah, and, just as an aside here, we are one man short today, at least more so than we normally are. It's just, obviously it's just me and Drew here today. But that kind of works out because, as I was just telling Drew during our brief housekeeping before we started, I have literally the longest note file that I've ever created for this podcast in terms of my talking points. So I have lots to glow about, some things to bitch about, but mostly a whole ton of things to just celebrate in the second half of The Gathering Storm here. So let's jump into our style discussion. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So I know we talked about this for sure last week with Craig, but I just want another reason to glow about this. How well is Sanderson continuing to nail Dark Rand as a character?
Yeah.
Oh my god, some of the prose he has in this volume coming from Rand's point of view is astounding, man. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. The one chapter that always stands out to me is actually when he's meeting with Tuon, and we see it from Tuon's point of view. And this, the description of this, aura, this dark aura around Rand, and how intense he is, and it's, it's really hardcore, and we can understand, because he did this from Tuon's point of view instead of from Rand's point of view. We get to see just how scary Rand has gotten, because we don't quite have that same impression of things inside Rand's head as we do when we're in other people's heads around him and seeing just how dark he's gone.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something that a point that I've made before, and something I love about what Jordan was able to pull off in creating a sense of terror and fear, or just perhaps in a lot of cases awe of certain characters of his, simply through someone else's eyes. Utilizing that point of view, that switch, and and Sanderson just proves that he is just as effective at doing that. Like, it's awesome. It was like reading this entire second half was just a study in, I guess, ghostwriting, even though it's not really ghostwriting, and just how to take up the torch and carry on someone else's style a little bit, just enough. I have nothing but good things to say about Brandon's work here. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I loved his proclivity for ending chapters. That's something that's very classic Sanderson with his cliffhangers. I love them. 2 Egwene chapters I want to bring to the forefront here: News in Tel Aranriad and A Visit from Varen Sedai. Consecutive chapters, consecutive cliffhangers, one after another. In the first, we have Varen freezing Egwene with a blatant lie. Boom. Big moment for the series. And in the second, Egwene is wrenched from the dream to the Shanchan attack on the tower, and she's horrified that she's also unable to channel. What a classic Brandon Sanderson-esque oh shit moment.
Yeah. I mean, that is that one line, by the way, that dress you are wearing is green. That is
if I was editing that, I would add a glass breaking noise in that, the glass shattering noise right there. Like, oh my god. Right?
I will say, I believe that line was written by Robert Jordan. I know the scene with Varen and Egwene, A Visit from Varen Sedai, was written by Robert Jordan. I don't know if he wrote the chapter before it or not. But yeah.
That's awesome.
There's some just wonderful stuff in this portion of the book. Another one that that sticks with me is the Saerin point of view.
Yes.
Where she's the whatever the accepted tells her, like, oh, there's resistance up on the 22nd floor, and she's like, what? That's the novice Egwene.
Yeah. At first they think the 22nd. Wait, that's the Brown quarters. Like, what? The Browns? Yeah. They wouldn't be. Wait a second. No, they changed. The novice quarters? Like that further surprise. Not just surprise, but the further incredulous surprise on top of that. And then the reversal was just executed so well.
Yeah. How in the world she trailed off, eyes widening slightly. Egwene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, she just knows. She knows that it's Egwene. Of course it is,
Yeah. Oh, my God. Another thing that Brandon does so well, that's something that is so classic him, is these long introspective sequences during which a character is really conflicted about themselves, usually about some form of perceived, hypocrisy in themselves. And in this case, it was the chapter, from Rand's point of view, just near the end here, Just Another Man, as he prepares to devastate the Shanchan in their place of power. He sees the people. He compares them with the people that he's supposedly protecting. His conflicted feelings, I think, are what made that sickness grow to the point of physically incapacitating him. And the revelation that follows is just so much more quaint for it. Chef's kiss.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that pretty much actually rounds up my style discussion. A lot of my points here are about characters.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we covered Matt pretty extensively in our last Gathering Storm episode, and it's kind of just more of the same in this one. I will say the backstories thing.
Yeah, I have a point here about those. Yep.
No, just no.
Yeah.
But
so are we just diving into Matt? Because I have just 3 points here.
Sure, we can dive into Matt. There's not a lot that I had to say about him.
Right.
So it's a good, quick one to get out of the way.
Sure, yeah. No, Hinder's Tap. I loved that sequence the first time around, especially before I had more context for it in the future. Like, knowing that each person was going to be, as you so eloquently put, respawned with Sunrise. I mean, obviously, that's in itself is terrifying for a whole slew of other reasons. But considering what I thought this scenario was at first, that random, isolated populations of people are just losing their shit and killing each other for good, consider the alternative. I was like, damn, it wasn't quite as scary, but I mean, I should say maybe it's scary for a different reason now that we have more knowledge on it, but ugh.
Right, yeah, that was one of those sequences in the Wheel of Time that stands out because the Wheel of Time is not a horror series, but there are these moments of horror. And in a lot of ways, Hinder's Tap has those trappings of like that classic horror, feel to it.
Yeah. Oh boy, does it ever. And I want to say I do enjoy how Brandon writes Matt's action sequences. And I know you, not you, Drew, but you, the collective you as the fandom. You can say what you want about how he handles Matt's dialogue, but when Matt gets to throw knuckles, or Power Forge bladed staffs, rather, I think Sanderson honestly handled that with flair. Like, I don't know how I feel about the use of, and that's when the screaming began. But other than that, top-notch action sequence, I thought. Matt being the reluctant hero. Fighting with the women. I love the fact that he was still finding a way to fight with the women that he's trying to rescue. Jolene and Edicina, right? He's cursing them out for being foolish, nearly killing them. He might not often... this is what I'm trying to say. He might not often sound like Jordan's Matt, but he definitely at times feels like Jordan's Matt. And I want to give credit where credit's due. Like, this is a stellar Matt scene.
Yeah, so one of the things that Brandon Sanderson has pretty well nailed down across all of his writing is that, like, when that guy wants to go into an action scene, it's going to be a killer action scene. He has a really cinematic style. You can very vividly see what's happening in his fights, but he doesn't let it get bogged down in the details. It's fluid. It moves fast. There are certain scenes in Mistborn and Stormlight Archive that stand out, and there are scenes like this in Hinder's Tap in the Wheel of Time that Brandon Sanderson wrote that stand out in that way.
Yeah. Like, this might be my favorite Sanderson Matt scene, with the possible exception of one near towards the end of Towers of Midnight. But we're not there yet, so...
If it's one I'm thinking of, I believe that was also a Robert Jordan scene, actually.
Now you have my interest. We definitely have to go over that again when we get there. So that's a discussion for Towers of Midnight Part 2. And my last map point was here, in the village Trust Terror. I did not like the fabricated stories.
No.
It felt so forced and out of place. Like, such a hard no from me. Like, nope.
Yeah, I very much agree there. I will say, though, while that felt out of character for Matt, it felt very much in character for him to treat Varen's letter the way he does. That, of course, he's not going to read the letter.
Yeah, of course. And he has to double down, convince himself that of course he's not going to read it. He can wait 30 days, can't he?
Yeah. And that felt very on point for Matt to me. That was that specific bit, reading through this again, rang the most true to the Matt that I know and love from Robert Jordan.
Remind me to bring up that my particular issue in Towers of Midnight with that 30 days time limit there as well. Because I'm gonna be very, very irritated about something at that point. But going forward, who should we talk about next? I have a ton to say about Egwene, and I have a ton to say about Rand, and some to say about Nynaeve.
Let's start with Egwene.
Okay. Should I kick us off?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I don't recall if I did or didn't get around to briefly defending Gawain last episode. That does not mean I like him. It does not mean I like him at all. But right now, I do have one teensy little thing to offer in his defense. Just something small. And it's not really so much a defense of Gawain as it is a condemnation of Egwene, which is kind of why I'm piping up here and my points about Egwene. But there comes a moment in, I forget which chapter, but Egwene thinks to herself that she's glad that Gawain, he doesn't look ashamed when she reprimands him, only perturbed, because as Amyrlin, and she thinks this very specifically, she needed a man who would speak his mind in private, but in public, she'd need someone who supported her. Couldn't he see that? I wrote, bitch, where do you think you are right now? I'll give you a hint. It's not in public. You know? And when he calls her on it, he says, you love me, which, okay, a little, on her side, it's Gavin? Gawain. Come on, bro. Like, Jesus, man. Lay it on thick enough, why don't you? She responds with, Egwene the woman loves you, but Egwene the Amyrlin is furious with you. But, maybe he wouldn't have such a hard time distinguishing the two if he ever got to see Egwene the woman.
Right, yeah.
Right? But the last time he saw that bitch was in Cairhien, in Aiel skirts, hiding from Aes Sedai. So, calm down. Perhaps you can understand his bumbling a little more too, because he's definitely bumbling. But Egwene, if your horse was any higher, you'd be in stable orbit.
Wow.
That's just me. That's just starting off. I still have more to say, but that's the end of that point. So I'll let you.
Well, yeah.
On that if you want.
I was going to say, like, overall, Egwene in this portion of the book, I tend to like a lot. But there are two specific things that frustrate me about her, and those are her this scene that you're bringing up with Gawain and how she treats Swan after Swan brings her out of the tower. Mm-hmm. So, as I said in the the recap, how like technically Swan broke orders to go in and save Egwene. And Egwene acts like that is the very end of the world. And that it undermined everything Egwene had just accomplished in the tower, and it was all for naught now because she needed to stay there. It's like, no, Egwene. Literally none of that was undone. And had Swan not gone in, you probably would have been killed by a blood knife while you were there unconscious.
Oh, she doesn't know either of those things yet, though.
No, but this is...
but it's the reason why she should perhaps trust him in the future, I think.
And she doesn't give Swan much of a chance to explain herself. Swan does know about the blood knives. Like Swan had to save
about the blood knives.
Well, she had to save Gareth Bryan.
That was a blood knife? That wasn't just a regular assassin with a poison needle thing?
I mean, that was my impression, was that it was a blood knife.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh. Cool. Okay. I'm gonna definitely.
But either way, Swan knows that there were assassins in the tower going around trying to like take out targets of opportunity.
Yeah.
And Egwene would have been the most opportunistic of targets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like lying there insensate. But of course, Egwene cannot hear any defense from Swan. Anything that Swan says just makes Egwene angrier. And the way she treats Swan after everything Swan did to build Egwene's foundation from the get-go. Egwene never would have gotten to where she was without Swan. And then the moment Swan stops being of immediate use to her, she treats her like garbage.
Yeah, and in Swan's defense, again, not like she needs defense, I'm sure a lot of people will agree, but something that I found really telling about Swan's attitude and her character as a human being, her whole moral code, she considers this a worthy exchange. She thinks I may very well have just lost Egwene's trust forever. But then she comes to terms with that, she comes to grips with that and thinks, well, if that's what it takes, that's what it took. Because in Swan's mind, the rebel faction was about to leave Egwene. Like, this was the last thing that she could do. So, I can see how Egwene would be pissed off at Swan right now because she's acting on a lot of, I should say, a real lack of information at this point. But in the future, like, Egwene is definitely too harsh with Swan, too harsh with Gawain, but especially with Swan.
what frustrates me is that, yes, she has a lack of, information, but she's also resistant to getting new information from Swan.
Yeah.
Like, she has to be self-righteous and angry, and she wouldn't be able to do that if she let Swan actually explain things. So Swan is literally like out in the cold, tethered outside her tent like a dog, basically, begging on her knees for forgiveness. It's like, because there are no explanations, there's only anger and forbearance on Egwene's part.
It's not becoming in an Amerlin figure.
No, but at the same time, a lot of Egwene in the tower in this section is awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I still have more to bitch about with Egwene, but I will have some to actually champion her for towards the end of my Egwene points here too. Definitely. A specific thought that Egwene has, another one that pissed me off though. There's a few. When she leaves Swan after hearing the news that Gawain has joined the Rebel forces, the Rebel Tower forces, she considers her options. One of those options being setting up a second White Tower, but she immediately decides against it because not only would they compete, but, and this is what irritated me, nothing would deter the other nations or societies from setting up their own schools of channeling. That's not a quote, sorry, I realized I said that in a monotone like it was. But that's basically the gist of her thought there, her thought process, that nothing would deter the other nations or societies themselves from just joining up or setting up their own schools of channeling. Could you imagine that, Drew? A world where every bit of feminine use of the one power is not entirely governed by Egwene's blessing?
Yeah.
Imagine that. So
that would be just terrible.
Oh my god, what a nightmare world that would be. But to start moving into some things to compliment her on, her fight against the Shan-Chan was so badass.
Yes,
it's just so badass, and it honestly, for me at this part in the series, it still more than makes up for my issues with who she is at this point. I mean, wow, what a move to rally the novices, to teach them to link and form organized resistance. The scene, as you brought up from Saren's point of view, is just perfect. They realize some of the blasts are coming from the tower, and they pinpoint the location. I shivered this time around. Like 50 reads later, I still shivered. Oh my god.
Yeah. While I certainly have my criticisms for Egwene's tendencies as a leader, she does have some good leadership qualities. This is where we saw them on full display. She is best when leading by example. When she spends so much time like trying to be a leader, that's when she starts doing stupid things. But when she just lets herself be herself and goes and does things as an example to others, she tends to do a lot of good. And this is, like I said, this is probably the single best example of it in the series, where she becomes that role model for the novices, and at the same time, she provides an example for the Aes Sedai, who are all a mess at this point. None of them have any clue what they're doing. The Battle Ajah is a joke. Adalorna is like embarrassed because they're so terrible at what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah. And Egwene provides the example, and that's why, more than anything else Egwene did, except for maybe embarrassing Elida in front of, so many of the higher ups, more than anything else she did, this is what makes the Ajah heads decide, yes, she deserves to be Amerlin. We need to vote her in.
Yeah.
It's when she's offering an example of virtue, not when she's getting into the mud and muck of Aes Sedai politicking.
Yeah,
that's when Egwene is the best.
Again, is it simply enough to draw all these conclusions from seeing what we are from Egwene's point of view? No, they decided to have this entire discussion happen inside the White Tower, away from Egwene's presence. These are characters who are talking about Egwene, not to or in front of Egwene, and I think that's all the reason why it's as heavy as it is. It's awesome.
Yeah.
We have.
It just goes back to the style points that we have hammered home over and over and over. in this series, the way Robert Jordan and now Brandon Sanderson wield point of view. Whether you use it as a sledgehammer to drive a point home, or you use point of view like a scalpel to subtly,
I love it.
subtly
I love
work
the analogy.
on themes and tropes and things like that. Of all the things, I don't think I brought this up in our first Gathering Storm episode, but of all the things that Brandon Sanderson does as a writer, I think Robert Jordan's influence and his style is most similar in the way they use point of view.
Yeah, I could, you know what? I agree with that. I haven't done a full dive comparing the two, but just as a knee-jerk reaction, yeah, I'd be very tempted to agree. That's the manner in which he most exemplifies everything he learned from Robert Jordan.
Yeah, and like without spoiling anything, I've been doing a lot of Stormlight Archive reading recently, and they're, those hallmarks are so much there. You can see the lessons that Brandon learned from reading The Wheel of Time and from writing The Wheel of Time and applying them into the Stormlight Archive, into his own works.
Oh,
it's so. I know we got off a little bit from Egwene there, but
that's all right, my man.
But that's the core of it. Is Egwene is a point of view trap in so many ways. People talk about Matt being an unreliable narrator, and yes, he is. Egwene is also an unreliable narrator. So when we have these scenes of people outside her, from their points of view, ruminating on Egwene the person, that is when we get a lot more, knowledge and insight into just what kind of a character she is.
Totally agreed. We get the end of Elida do Avinri a Royhan. I mean, not the true end. We see her again, but it is the end of her reign of terror. It sucks that she's collared, but in this case, it only sucks for her, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And honestly, can you think of a more fitting end to the reign of that disgusting human being?
Yeah, I thought it was appropriate.
I didn't see it coming.
Poetic.
I loved it. Yeah,
poetic. I did see it coming when.
I don't know why I didn't see it coming. It seems
when
obvious,
this book
right?
first came out. Yeah,
just deserves
because
sweeter.
So much of what she did in these latter books was about like oppressing others. Was denigrating Shamarin, demoting her from Aes Sedai. The way she treated Egwene as more or less a slave, and the way she treated Alviarin. Yes, Alviarin's evil. Elida didn't know that. Elida just didn't like her.
That's it. That's her. It's her reasoning that pisses me off more than anything else. Look, Shamarin. What did Shamarin do? She just wasn't as poised as an Aes Sedai should be. Yeah. Really? Right? That's it. That's ultimately what... Yeah. Going back as far as, I think, the Fires of Heaven, she was...
And so Elida broke her spirit, broke her will, to the point where she was like, all I'm worth being is a scullery maid, basically. Yeah. A washwoman. And, yeah.
To round up my Egwene points here, I did not like Egwene's speech following the reunification of the White Tower.
No.
I found it to be corny, as well as the reactions of those around her. I mean, look, novices, I can see. They're supposed to be practicing for the shawl already. The accepted, I'm a little... come on, they should have a little more poise than that. They're already supposedly partway there. But the few Aes Sedai who we see losing themselves in that cheer, no, I don't buy that. It just felt a tad too gratuitous for Egwene fanboys and fangirls.
The other thing that I wanted to point out with that speech, I've heard from a couple of friends who are blacksmiths who took issue with the way Egwene describes.
Oh, you're talking to a welder, my man. Trust me.
Yeah. So, I know that that's not necessarily the most accurate thing to how forging works.
Yeah, but last time I brought my metalworking expertise to the podcast was to bitch about Perrin wielding a 4-pound hammer like a feather.
Yeah.
And then I got flamed for that one. No, I just didn't. I'm kidding.
No, I mean...
There's a couple people that are like, come on, Rob. And I'm just like, yeah, I know. I said that during the episode. I get it. I was being pedantic, but come on. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like, I tend to give this speech a pass for that sense because, like, it's not about the accuracy of blacksmithing, it's the metaphor.
Yeah, and let's be real. How much does Egwene know about metalworking? I mean, This is something that she probably assumes that all the other Aes Sedai don't know any more than she does, so maybe she took some artistic liberty.
Yeah. What I take most umbrage with in this speech, though, is how
umbrage is a word?
Uh-huh.
I'm just finding that out now.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Hey, I said I was going to point that out every time we got to that point in the podcast. Normally I point it out in my notes when I read an unfamiliar word, but now when Drew says an unfamiliar word, I'm going to... Umbridge, the character from Harry Potter, has an actual namesake. Good to know. I assume it means, like, detestable.
Yeah, like...
odious. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, anyway.
Sorry, go ahead.
What I don't like is this line. You rebels before me have done something terrible. You have shattered the tower and raised up a rival Amerlin. For the first time, troops have been marshaled by Aes Sedai against Aes Sedai. I led those troops. I know of this shame. Necessary or not, it is a shame. And so it is that I require your admission of guilt. You must take responsibility for your crimes, even those performed in the name of the greater good. So, what she just did there is so freaking hypocritical. She's like, this is awful. It may have been necessary, but this is awful that we did this. You all need to be punished for this. I know you did it because I led it, but only you need to be punished, not me.
Yeah, she should have at least mentioned some form of personal penance. Right?
Yeah,
but then again, can the Amerlin... Does she interpret the seat of the... does she interpret the seat of the Amerlin in being able to do that? I don't know. I'm sure the
Elida
could.
Elida did it. Elida was forced to do it by Alviarn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She was but then again, she proclaimed that it was will. There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well pointed out.
Yeah. This speech, for that reason, bugs the hell out of me because like she treats the rebels very unfairly here, and unfairly in relation to herself. I can see like a justification for why she says there needs to be punishment here. There needs to be, reparations made. But the fact that she excludes herself from that is so ridiculous.
Yeah, I can see why.
She says, you must take responsibility for your crimes, not we must take responsibility for our crimes. Yeah. She excludes herself 2 sentences after saying, I led those troops.
Yeah. Somebody who is as clever as Egwene, who was able to give advice to so many Aes Sedai in the weeks previously and give them very, very neat and deft solutions to their very intricate problems and therefore earn her respect. I think Egwene should have been able to come up with something a little more graceful in terms of... I don't know, something better than just leaving herself out entirely. Like, it's good that she mentioned she was guilty, and I think it's good that she didn't kind of really weaken herself at all, but I think she could have found a more graceful way around that. I mean, that was it does leave a lot of room for, okay, but, Yeah, I get you.
So, like, I'm quite certain that a lot of those women are like, what the hell, man?
Yeah, and we see some of them cheering, which is part of why I'm like, okay, come on. Like, but anyway, so that's the end of my Egwene points. Besides just saying this may be officially the last of anything I like about Egwene going forward.
Oh,
there's one moment in particular I know I'm going to cheer for her, but as a person, I despise her unconditionally going forward.
Well, I have one more note on her, and that is, I think one of the smartest things she ever does in this series is picking Sylviana.
Yes, I wasn't sure if I wanted to talk about that or if we'd have time, but yeah, that was definitely very, very deft.
So, shall we move on to Rand then?
Yes, let's do it.
Because, man, this is it for Rand. This is, some of the best character work in the entire series.
Thank you. I was so prepared to have to defend that statement coming from me. Yes.
Yeah, it's wonderful. The Rand character arc in this book is what makes this book land as high on my ranking of Wheel of Time books as it does. There are plenty of things in this book that I have and will criticize. Rand's character arc is emphatically not one of them.
Yeah, and it's so good that of all the characters that, or I shouldn't say of all the characters, of the few characters that a lot of people seem to agree that he handled poorly, he being Brandon, he nailed Randolph Thor, arguably the biggest, most influential character in all of epic fantasy. He nailed the very essence of that character and his journey. It was, that's some of his best work ever.
Yeah, I find it interesting how when Brandon gets asked about writing characters in the Wheel of Time, he tends to say, the characters I struggled with the most were Matt and Avienda, and the character that I understood the best was Perrin.
And it reads.
But he never talks about Rand, and I think he did Rand the best of them all.
Yeah. I just don't like Perrin as much as a person, as a character, so any issues I have with Brandon's portrayal of Perrin, I also just take as, it's not really Brandon, it's just Perrin. So I give Brandon a lot of leeway, but for me, yeah, definitely it's Rand. I hear people talk about Perrin all the time, about how well he handled Perrin. Fucking nailed Rand, though.
He did a good job with Perrin. I'm not saying he was phenomenal. Poor working with that character, but Rand is on another level.
Yeah.
Going from this,
I'll say this:
point that feels like a nadir with killing Semirage and nearly killing Min under the influence of the Domination Band, and then going even darker, going to the point where he balefires Natron's Barrow, and then going even darker from there, where he's ready to balefire like half of Ebu Dar, basically, and then thinking about how he's going to go to Amador and balefire the Fortress of Truth there, and then he's going to go to Tanchico, and he's like planning out where he's just going to commit genocide.
I would have thought that his lowest moment would have been when he was about to commit patricide.
Oh, with Tam?
Even worse than patricide, balefire. There's got to be a bigger word, right? Like,
so there are a couple of things here, like. The Tam and the Ebu Dar scenes are pretty inextricably linked. The Tam aspect of it is the personal low for Rand.
Right.
The Ebu Dar scene is the external versus the internal. They're two sides of the same coin. This 2-chapter segment here at the end of the book is when Rand is at his worst, and then he has his turn. He has his apotheosis and his moment of realization atop Dragonmount.
Yeah, I would say
and comes out of it back into the light. And man,
I'd say it was absolutely necessary to have both the internal and external conflicts come together at the same moment, so that this transformation into this next person that Rand becomes, is all the more quaint. Yeah, no, Sanderson is just so good at writing Rand, precisely where he needs to be before his big revelation and this transformation atop Dragonmount. There is this moment in chapter 29, though, that going up to these points, it gets so dark. He's going over the list. Rand is going over the list, and just before Lews Therin adds Min's name, Rand has a thought that I think is very indicative of the rock bottom that he's reached in terms of his outlook for his future. He thinks he would have more names to add before he died. Not only is he assuming future failure and future pain, but he's just inadvertently added those last 3 words, before he died. And it just goes to show that his outlook now is just, how much can I save before I die? And it's just so depressing.
Yeah, it's man, and Nynaeve, you have to feel for Nynaeve throughout all this, because she's the only one Dark Rand trusts even a little bit at this point. She's the only one who has, but she's the only one who has real influence on him,
right?
And this is a woman who's known Rand since he was a baby, So you have to think about what it would do to Nynaeve seeing him go down this path. Seeing him become so twisted, so cruel, and then ultimately seeing him just nuke what amounts to, a palace the size of a small town.
Yeah. Yeah, and definitely have something to say about that for Nynaeve when we get to my points about Nynaeve. They're not long or many in number. But continuing on with Rand, though, I do like how we got... Sorry, my throat is really screwed up. I got that coronavirus, I guess. I do... that's just a joke, everybody, at the moment. I do like how we get a little bit of foreshadowing, though, with Rand's personality starting to meld with Lews Therin's. In the beginning of Before the Stone of Tyr, Rand is arguing with Lews Therin and is like half trance, and their voices start to mix. He says, and I say he, Rand, not Lews Therin in his head, but Rand himself says, "They cursed by my name," and he says, "Here we are again and again." Like I just said, that's Lews Therin's voice. It's like the first whiff of a delicious meal that the chef has been cooking in the kitchen for the past 10 minutes. It's just, oh yeah, it's lovely. and I know what you're thinking at this point. Did Rob just refer to Zen Rand as a delicious meal? Yes, yes he did. Is that perhaps a little gay? Maybe it is. Should that be a problem? No, it isn't.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, I mean, I think there's, going back to the point of view bit and, maybe writing style, it is also, like, really, really cool how Brandon dealt with Rand in this book, where, we already talked about the Tuon scene, and when we talk about Natron's Barrow, like, that wasn't from Rand's point of view. It was from Min's point of view. And we get these scenes around Rand from other people's points of view, but we get just enough inside his head to truly understand how desolate his internal landscape is. And then I'm going to have another discussion about this in Towers of Midnight.
Oh.
As, when we finish this book with Zen Rand, as you said, or Jesus Rand, as some people call him.
I haven't heard that one yet.
Super Saiyan Rand.
I don't like that one.
Yeah, the way the story is constructed around him makes so much more of an impact than if we just got all of it from inside his head. This goes back all the way to Dragon Reborn, when most of that book we only had, what? Like three or four
scenes,
Rand points of view, and then finally we got like a full chapter with him at the end. But here we have a similar thing going on in this portion of the book. A significant chunk of the Rand scenes are not from Rand's point of view, and then at the end we get these the 2 or 3 straight chapters of Rand at his darkest.
At his darkest, exactly.
And
where
then
we need to be.
Coming out of the darkness.
Yeah. Seeing Rand take a more direct and prominent hand in events, because in Knife of Dreams he was mostly just kind of biding his time in the countryside. Granted, it was still very, very eventful. I mean, that Shadowspawn attack on Algarin's Manor, wow. But riding in this book, he's taking a more prominent role. Like, he's riding into Bandar Eben. He's immediately tasking himself with finding the king, restoring order, and feeding the people if he can. My heart broke for him a little bit when Milisair Chadmar tells him that he can be crowned quickly, or however she phrases it. Like, okay, appropriate response from Rand asserting that, he's not there to rule Erad Doman. He's there to instill order. But what is it like to step into a country, not with the intent really to conquer or even just to liberate, but just to provide leadership and aid, perhaps, and to have that assumption, you're here for another crown, aren't you? It's like, damn, it's just, it hurts. It hurts for Rand.
Yeah, and it hurts for Itzaralda, by proxy, because, we've now gotten to know him
a little
pretty
bit.
well.
Yeah.
He only got his first point of view a couple books ago, but we've gotten a reasonable amount of him at this point, and we understand how much his love for his country dictates what he does. And to think about, like, he's not even there for Rand rolling up and everybody immediately buckling under and assuming he's a despot and all of this. And yeah,
and I'm gonna have a lot more to say about I almost said Ingtar. Oh my god. What the Ronald Interalda in Towers of Midnight for sure.
Yes.
I'm gonna have tons to say about him in Towers of Midnight. But keeping on with Rand, I'm about halfway through my points here.
Oh man.
Yeah, I love, but these are shorter going forward. These are more like just smaller thoughts asides here. I love that Cad Twain escapes him in the street, but we immediately switch to his point of view and see that he did in fact notice her there. Creepy, ominous, but just badass. I loved it. Rand with the power play when he's interrogating the boy Curb, the one compelled. Oh my god, man! The air, the atmosphere in that room, I can feel it suffocating me when I read it. When he quietly asks him, "Do you think, if I so willed it," or however he phrases it, that I could stop your heart simply because I wanted to. I wanted it to happen. It's just like, and the fact that he's so quiet, it's just, oh my goodness. Meeting with Tuon, you brought this up earlier. Formal parlay between the Dragon Reborn, Daughter of the Nine Moons, something we've been waiting for so many books to see. And to see it end the way it did was one of the most terrifying things, I think, to happen in this whole series. More than any other Bubble of Evil. More than the Bale screams like that we see. This scene has a feeling. Oh my god. This scene has a feeling of wrongness. Of monumental things happening as they aren't supposed to. Tuon's point of view as she's like struggling against her own desire to capitulate to his effect as a Taviran, this aura of darkness that she almost spots and latches onto as a hold against that feeling is terrifying. I don't know if I had goosebumps or goose mountains after reading this for the first time. It was, oh god.
Well, so one of the things that has always stood out to me about this scene is that, yes, it's creepy, it's intense, it's dark, but on top of that, it's a subversion of expectations. Because for, readers who track this kind of thing, clear back in The Dragon Reborn, Warrain quotes the prophecies of the dragon and says, that he is meant to bind the Nine Moons to serve him. And, so if anybody remembers that as they're reading through and you start realizing what the Nine Moons means, you're like, oh. And so when this scene starts and Rand says, look, this is what's going to happen. You're going to call off your armies. You're going to, support me. He's basically trying to bind the Nine Moons to serve him. So you're expecting it to go a certain way because the prophecies say it will. Yeah. And whenever you hear about the Shanshan prophecies, you immediately want to say, oh, those are twisted. Those aren't real. But yet, the Shanshan version of them is what ends up coming true. And there's still some leeway where, oh, yes, they do serve him in a sense, but he also gets down on his knees before Tuon.
We don't know that yet.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the subversion of expectation here, and how what we expected to happen is not what happened. It's focused in this particular scene where if it were to happen the way we expected, this is when it would have happened. Yeah, we were so ready for it. We were salivating for it, and then it all goes wrong.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
So wrong. And I know a lot of people get upset with Tuon for how she acts in this chapter and how she goes ahead with the attack on Tar Valon.
I used to be. I still am in a tiny bit, but I understand.
See, I very much understand. It's not great, but I understand why she did it. She saw just how influenced by the shadow Rand has gotten. She knows, listen, if we buckle under and let this guy just do whatever he wants, this is going to go really, really badly. So,
yeah,
I can't blame her. I think she was a little misguided in attacking the White Tower instead of attacking Rand himself, but,
Yeah, I agree. We talked about Natron's Barrow. How am I supposed to find the words to describe the epicness, the beauty, the terror of that sequence? I can't. But finally, my last point with Rand, finally, I wrote, Rand is reunited with Tam Althor. And what a heartbreaking, awkward, and adorable moment for both of them. What a terrifying thing for both of them. And eventually, what a wonderful thing for the both of them. Like, I love that Tam's arrival was the catalyst for Rand's transformation into the one true Dragon Reborn. Like, it's just so perfect, and it's handled so well. It brings tears to my eyes every time.
Yeah, it's a really touching scene. Heartbreaking, but definitely well done.
Yeah.
Well written.
Yep. And the last character I have to discuss is just a couple of points about Nynaeve. Should I kick us off then? I'll just say, I love Nynaeve. That's my first point. My first point is just that statement 3 times. My second point is she is amazing. And my third point is that the work she does on Rand's behalf, of like investigating the death of the messenger boy. Like, this is Nynaeve when she has achieved perfection as a character in my eyes. Her bleeding heart is balancing Rand's cold ruthlessness so nicely, but it's still failing, so it's ominous. She takes control of people around her, but she doesn't subject them. She listens to Rand, but occasionally, speaks up to counter him, or maybe just spin something differently. I don't know. I honestly don't think I can find a flaw with her character in who she is or how she's written if you paid me money to.
Yeah, like, she has grown so immensely since she left Elaine.
Yes.
Where she has had to mature and had to step into a certain role as an advisor for Rand, and that dealing with Rand as he has become Dark Rand has shown her how her old way of doing things, her inconsiderate, her bullying, that kind of stuff, just that's not going to work. She needed to learn and grow and become better at being a role model and being a teacher and being an advisor and a supporter and a healer.
Yeah. No, it was a wonderful job on carrying on this, like, a spectacular Nynaeve. Mr. Sanderson, bravo. Well done. Nynaeve heals compulsion. My girl Nynaeve does the impossible for the second time. I love her. She's amazing. But then seeing her efforts repaid by Rand, not only refusing to go to Lan's aid, but considering using Lan's death as a potential advantage.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's what the point I was going to be making earlier when you were talking about Nynaeve and how Rand just kind of just screws her over so much in this section. It's just this is what really pissed me off, and I knew that something had to give with Rand's character, and this is where I started to be like, okay, no, he is not going to beat the Shadow as he is right now, or I shouldn't want him to. That was cold, man. That was just it was disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary to think about how close we were to Rand becoming what he was trying to fight, where, if so many minute things hadn't happened, Rand could have gone off, faced the Dark One, won, and it would have been just as bad as if he lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh boy, so that's the end of my character discussion points here. I do have some miscellaneous to get out of the way, but do you have any other character points style or character discussion points you want to get out of the way before we do?
No. There are a couple more things that I want to touch on in this book, but I want to talk about them in relation to things in Towers of Midnight, so I'll save it for that.
Okay. I'll say I like how Sanderson handled the real face of Varen after we finally get to see it. It was pretty cool. Something I've been waiting for a long time. And completely beside that, though, not even involved at all, I had a shower thought earlier today. I was reading some stupid internet joke or post or other about, maybe if we paid our doctors like we paid our star athletes, we'd have a cure for this damn virus by now. This being coronavirus, for those who are listening to this in the future. This is, what are we recording this on? March 22nd. It's my sister's birthday today. Yeah, happy birthday, Nikki. But besides that, I'm going on here. So I was preparing to write a retort to that statement, right? Or that idea, like, oh, maybe if we paid our doctors, you know, like we are star athletes and whatnot. I really started to consider what society would look like, what that society would look like, and I realized, holy crap, that's the Age of Legends. That's exactly what the entire Second Age was. Utopia, where science and technological progress were the big earners. Their rock stars were fucking doctors and scientists. And it struck me as really cool. Like, as soon as I finished that shower, I whipped up my phone and I was like, I gotta bring this one up on the podcast later today.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of Avienda's punishments, brilliant, downright hilarious. Moving water, one drop on a finger at a time. I don't know why I chuckle every time I get to that point.
Yeah, that's awful.
But it's so genius.
It's just so bad.
It's so genius, though. I'm frustrated as hell with Gawain, but who honestly, like, who's not at this point? I'm also not holding Egwene entirely blameless. I made that very clear earlier. But I honestly think, how about this? I honestly think that if she could have just, if she can have semi-regular meetings in Tel'aran'rhiod with the rebels, maybe she can put, say, 30 minutes of time aside one night in Tel'aran'rhiod for Gawain. Let a man use the ring just for a few minutes, so that she can rationally explain everything to him about why it's so important that she stays there and what she's trying to accomplish. I mean, I get.
You don't understand, Rob. Men are lesser beings, and they don't deserve to know.
Like, I'm aware that this is just another example. That's a good point. I hadn't considered that, actually. I forgot which world we were in for a second there. I'm fully aware that this is just another example of, you know, communication is key in the Wheel of Time, and none of our characters use it. But, God damn, so much of her subordinates' headaches could be relieved by that one heart-to-heart with Gawain. That would probably be worth, like, losing the time that she would get in issuing orders. I think. Maybe. Going on, though, I have 3 more. Finding out Shiriam is Black Aja was horrifying. Damn. Corella Sedai, who had to announce the elephant in the room. Min's viewings. I'm sure by this point a lot of the fandom was using that same logic that Corella had put forward. If Min's viewings always come true, how is it that we're worried about losing? If some of these things can only happen after the last battle. But Min herself explains it, and not to Corella, even though ostensibly it is so, but to the fans. Except that, you know, one of my viewings not coming true is kind of the definition of the unraveling of the pattern.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And just my last miscellaneous point here. Watching Tam Thor put Cadsuane in her place.
Yes. Oh, when he comes back from that meeting with Rand, and he's like, you have got to be kidding me. You know?
So much win. So much win. So that's the end of my miscellaneous points. I'm ready to go on to our favorite scenes if you've got nothing else to kick out of the way.
Yeah. I think I'm ready for 3 favorite scenes. What do you got?
Okay. Mine are going to be pretty predictable, I think, because there are just so many perfect things that I have to bring up in this book. Rand obliterating Natron's Barrow, but mostly that line that he has just as he does it. Forgive me for calling this mercy as well. How does a line that perfect, I was going to say end up in a book like this, but then again, of course, it's a Sanderson book. Why not? But, like, so much weight to that scene. So that's my 3rd favorite. My 2nd favorite, pardon me, A Visit from Varen Sedai.
Yep.
Loved the scene. Loved everything about it. And Rand atop Dragonmount is my favorite scene. And it's like, I mean, I have to say that because it's literally my favorite moment it's like my 2nd or 3rd favorite moment in the entire series. If it wasn't for this, if it wasn't my favorite in this book, I'd have logistical problems defending that position in the future. So, and I do like it so much because we also get so much more context for this scene, knowing what it looks like from someone else's point of view.
Yeah.
In Towers of Midnight. So that's why I liked it. And one honorable mention, Egwene in the White Tower, as the Aes Sedai from Saren's point of view realize what's happening and coming from above them, and that there's we found you a better rallying point. Although that's not yet, but great, so great. Anyway, that's it. That's my favorite scenes.
Okay, so my 3rd favorite scene is what you just mentioned. It's Egwene defending the tower, stepping up to the plate where so many of the Aes Sedai could not. My second favorite is also a visit from Varen Sedai. Just the answer to such a long time mystery. It was brilliantly written, just wonderful all around. And my favorite scene in this book is the last that could be done.
I forgot about part one scenes.
Yeah, that scene is. It's not one of my favorite in like the whole series, but I think it is one of the best written in the whole series. That's up there with the Roydian sequences. That's up there with a
Hang
time
on
for
a second
iron.
there. Holy
just
shit. A time for iron.
The intensity, the sentence level writing is so powerful there. I will never forget the first time I read that scene. I mean, it is imprinted in flames on my memory. It's so good. It's so intense. Just, it deserves all the praise that people give it.
Well put. I was gonna respond to that, and I forget why. I loved this scene so much. I totally forgot about all the scenes that we had in the first part. Like, oh my god. But yeah, Sanderson executing this scene so well, so damn well. It was one of those points at which, as a reader, you smile and you're like, okay, this book is in the right hands. And it has to be, if you can imagine these moments with Rand atop Dragonmount, or Rand obliterating Natron's Barrow, or the scene that you just talked about. These have to be moments that Team Jordan had to read at one point and just go, we found the right guy. We really did.
Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah, so that's about it for me, man.
Okay. I think that takes us to the final draft then, yeah?
Yeah, it takes us to the final draft, and I will kick us off because I'm actually not drinking any alcohol at the moment. Okay. We've had a big upheaval lately, a big tragedy that I'm still getting over. But I decided that I'm going to lay off drinking for a little bit. Kind of marks an appropriate part of my time too. So for today, I'm having the most delicious fruit juice that anybody can get anywhere.
Oh, really?
Yes, and that is a bold claim, and I understand that, because this is from Bolthouse Farms. There is a place very nearby, I think about 10-15 minutes away from my place in Wheatley, I think it is. I'm not sure if they have more locations around North America. I actually didn't even look up if they're sold around the world or not. So, you have to look it up yourself. But Bolthouse Farms, they make this delicious, almost like fruit smoothie level drink. Right now I'm drinking the one called Blue Goodness. And it's got a whole bunch of berries on it. Blueberries, looks like blackberries, banana. Oh, here we go. I have apples, bananas, blueberries, blackberries. Oh, I nailed it with the blueberries and blackberries. It is so good. I can't... Drew McCaffrey. Never has any liquid graced this tongue that brought such a feeling of euphoria every time I drink this stuff. I mean, the taste and the smoothness is... I mean, it's practically a smoothie, like I said, but it's so damn good. It's just expensive. It's kind of expensive, and it's got a lot of sugar. But I'm having the best fruit juice in the world. This is Blue Goodness from Bolthouse Farms, but I also highly recommend Red Goodness as well. Oh, it's good drinking.
High praise.
Daiquiris, yeah.
Okay. Well, I am drinking a beer today. If listeners will recall, the first half of The Gathering Storm, I brought in a beer from Stable 12 Brewing Company called Dark. And, I talked about how dark Rand was getting, how dark the series was getting at that point. And today I brought in the counterpart to that. This is also from Stable 12. This is a blonde coffee stout. It's 7.5%. It's pretty... it's pretty sweet. There's a little bit of coffee, but not like super roasty coffee. It's just generally a creamy, sweet stout. But As I said, it is the counterpart. This beer is called Light.
Okay, I like the duality that we saw evolve over time there.
Where Rand was on the downward swing at the end of our last episode, now he is on the up. He's back into the light.
It's literally perfect because look at the epilogue that we had with that little shining light atop Dragon Mount, and Egwene decides that's probably good news. Or a good thing. I love that. That is so quaint. Very nicely done.
Yeah. And I can't wait for our next Towers of Midnight episode because I have an even better beer for that one.
Oh, no shit. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I bought that beer, I will say, for our Towers of Midnight episode, part 1, I bought that beer 8 months ago.
Wow. Oh, damn.
I saw it, and I knew exactly what it was going to be for.
You may have told me what it was.
Ooh.
I'm going to guess after we're done here. After we're done here, I'm going to guess it.
Okay.
But before we completely wrap up here, I just wanted to bring up one more thing that I had just considered. I'm looking at the timeline right now of the recording of this episode. Despite the fact that I started this by saying this is the longest amount of these, I should say the largest amount of notes I've ever brought to the table for discussion points. I'm looking at it right now, words 2420. I have almost 2,500 words written points to talk about for this episode. But since it was only the two of us, which I wasn't expecting, this is actually turning out to be, I think, our very shortest Wheel of Time episode, and it might be the shortest regular weekly content episode we've ever recorded.
Definitely not the shortest we've ever recorded. Might be the shortest Wheel of Time.
Well, how long was Jen Lyon's Ruin of Kings?
That was a little longer than this one, but Warrior of the Altai was shorter. Wrinkle in Time was shorter. I think one of the Rune Lords was shorter.
Look at those. It's looking
but
like it's going to end up around a minute 7, maybe a minute 8.
An hour 7, hour 8.
Something like that. Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah.
I do think that takes us into our outro. This has been episode 60 of the Inking Out Loud podcast. Next up, we'll be doing the first half of Towers of Midnight. As always, check us out on Patreon if you appreciate what we're doing. All of that money goes to Pat, our sound engineer, Danny, our artist, for all of their wonderful work and support. They make this podcast happen. Without them, I don't know what we'd be doing.
A lot more boring, that's for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. And in addition to supporting them, you'll get access to a lot of great stuff. We do monthly short fiction. We have bonus episodes on short stories and general science fiction, fantasy topics, stuff like that. Anyway, as always, I am your host, Drew McCaffrey. With me is my co-host, Rob Santos.
Yo.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Goodbye, everybody.